Welcome to Torah Smash, the podcast for nerdy Jews, where our lives of Jewish learning collide with our love of nerd culture. In each episode, we discuss what we lovingly call a Torah Smash, which we have defined as a beautiful collision of one thing from the world of Judaism with another from nerd culture. I am RDY, and joining me today are
Barack Malkin,
Ethan Lane Miller,
Rabbi Emma Gottlieb.
Yay! Our guest for today's episode is Rabbi Emma Gottlieb. Rabbi Emma is from Toronto, Ontario originally, and is currently working as a rabbi in Cape Town, South Africa, where she is the first woman to serve in a Cape Town congregation full-time. As the daughter of a rabbi, she grew up nerding out about all things Reform Judaism. As a rabbi, she especially loves to talk theology, ritual, and Torah. These days, when she's not immersed in rabbinic work, she is nerding out on all things Star Wars, Marvel, Lego, and much more. And she spends a lot of time thinking about energy, space, the cosmos, and how these things relate to God and to humanity. Welcome, Rabbi Emma.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's amazing to be here.
It's so exciting to have you. I know that you've wanted to do this for quite some time, so I'm so happy that we found the time. And let's also note that being in Cape Town, it is very early in the morning for you.
It is.
It is like early evening for the other three of us, but you are really a dedicated podcaster, getting yourself out of bed and just really.
That's based on when we're recording. If somebody's listening to this in the morning hours, she's in a very comfortable time right now.
That's true. Well, I'm a long-time fan, first-time caller. So,
Yay. As our audience is listening, what are you doing right now?
Me. I'm sitting in bed talking to all of you. My dogs are sleeping at my feet.
Still, wow.
And, yeah. So I woke up to do this, but I didn't get out of bed to do this.
That's
no problem.
That's the appropriate amount of effort for this podcast. Don't worry.
Do your two dogs have like nerdy names by chance?
No. Well, there's 3 of them, and they don't. They all have
Hebrew names?
I don't know. No, none of them. So
what are their names?
My dogs are Manny, who, well, lots of people ask me if his name is short for Manischewitz, and it's not. But after a while, I just started saying yes because people asked so much. So Manny Manischewitz, Blue, who is the girl of the family, and then Yuki, who is my puppy. And none of them have Hebrew names. But when I was thinking about getting a dog when I got Manny, which was a long time ago, and I was just like a baby rabbi, I thought that I was going to name my first dog Plony because I thought that was hilarious that a rabbi would have a dog named Plony. And then I realized...
for Jason, what does Plony mean?
Exactly. So Jason, Plony is the Talmudic equivalent of like Joe Schmo or Jane Doe. It's an any man name, but it's like a rabbinic inside joke. And I realized that if I named my dog Plony, I would spend the rest of my life explaining it to everybody. So I chickened out, and he's just Manny.
So instead of an everyman name, you just named it Manny.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, there you go.
Can we go back to something you said earlier? When you said baby rabbi, is that a rabbi who just works with babies or a rabbi who is a baby?
No, it's like a first year rabbi. It's like
I guess that works too.
From the first year right out of rabbinical school, we counted months.
Yeah. We counted minutes. How am I doing?
Sometimes. Okay, but before we get too into how the sausage is made, I was looking through your list of nerd interests, and the one that caught my eye is about a magical little boy named Harry Potter. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Harry Potter, and in preparation for today, I reread the first book. And I will say, A, it holds up. B, after having the movies in my head for so long, really great to go back to the books, and I might go ahead and finish the rest again. So we'll see how that pans out. But the part of the wizarding world of Harry Potter that I want to focus on is the location of most of our story. I want to talk about Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry.
I thought we were going to talk about staircases.
We might.
Yeah.
I mean, they are a part of Hogwarts.
Oh, that's true. They are too.
Yeah. When our heroes first see Hogwarts Castle, they are riding in these boats that have no rudder, no steering wheel, no sail, nothing to pull it. And no, I'm not going to talk specifically about Noah's Ark or Moses's basket, but they would be in that category. And the description of the castle appearing in the distance is majestic. I'm not going to read any of that just yet, but it's wonderful. And it makes you really feel like you're coming to an incredibly strange and scary and yet wonderful place. And it gives the kids a sense of excitement and wonder. And the first year's a little bit of fear. And of course, Harry and Ron have spent the time on the train bonding. And in the book, this is what struck me as interesting. In the book, Hermione
he buys the rest of the food on the train so nobody else can eat.
Yes, that's what we'll have the lot.
I would have hated to be in the next cart over and they're so sorry, we're out of snacks.
I will say I didn't read it that way. I read it as kind of a little bit of everything rather than all of everything.
Oh, okay.
Reminds me when you're at one of those like revolving sushi bar restaurants and the table right in front of you gets the thing you were eyeballing.
Right.
Totally.
Yeah.
I think I would have been out once the jelly bean flavors came to light.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. I was interested that they got fresh cut grass, and that's like one of the flavors that they don't actually make. At least I haven't actually had it from the Jelly Belly Birdie Bots. Not a sponsor. So this institution that they're coming to, it's an institution of learning. It's an institution of mystery. It's an institution where some bad things happen. And there's a lot of history to it. And there's a lot of like, oh, you just have to know. This is just how it is and get used to it. So I feel like I'm getting a little too obvious with my introduction. What is the parallel in the Jewish world to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry?
Well, let's let our guest first.
I wonder if it could possibly be HUC.
I would actually say HUC is an interesting guess.
Yeah, I think especially sort of today with a lot of the reckoning with the past pieces.
Yeah. And I would even say to a certain extent, you are correct. And just for Jason, HUC is Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion. It is the seminary / trade school / graduate program where they make rabbis in the Reform movement.
There definitely were days where we would be at HUC joking about how we were at Hogwarts.
You're technically not wrong. I was going a little more vague than that.
Can I give a guess?
Yeah.
I was thinking when you were talking about this institution, I was thinking more of just how Jewish communities welcome or create sort of a welcoming environment for those, right? It's this castle on a hill filled with protective spells. So there's security measures for only the people that are welcomed, but it's meant to welcome everybody. It never seemed to work.
That never seemed to work.
Right. And so part of me thinks it's like just Jewish community welcoming and belonging.
Yeah, I would say if we were talking about the larger world of Harry Potter, there probably the wizard community is a lot like the Jewish community, but this is where they train the wizards. So I'm going to say this is...
Well, I have a guess.
Okay.
Is it Jewish summer camp?
Oh, that's a brilliant guess too. And
Jewish summer camp wishes. They wish they were year round.
So first off, it is. I run camps all throughout the year.
Touche.
Second, shout out to past guest Rachel Frisch, who teamed up with me to do Quidditch when we were day camp counselors in Dallas as an activity. And it was a lot of fun. But to directly like answer this, you talk about like the protective spells and how it's the castle on the hill and it's like a place so different everywhere else. I totally think a summer camp. And also in the same, when you're like, wait, Dementors came? And it's like, wait, you did what at summer camp? It's like, yeah, no, that was really a thing. It happened.
At Crane Lake Camp one year, we had a bear. We all had to go inside because we were scared of the bear.
Yeah.
I'll say Harry Potter definitely has that like super excited end of the season you're not there excitement to want to be at this place where all of his friends and his family is.
Right.
Yeah.
Like
But
at the
guys,
start of
Yeah,
every book.
RDY, whatever yours is, it's wrong. This is summer.
I've got another guess. I also was wondering if it could be the temple in Jerusalem, like the first and second
Oh,
temple.
that's interesting. Yeah, that's a little farther back than I was going. Today, I want to talk about the institution of yeshivot, or in singular, a yeshiva. So, a yeshiva, for Jason and for any guests who might not know, is an institution that houses young Jews wanting to learn Judaism, where they go and they very often will stay at the yeshiva or are housed by families who support the yeshiva. And we actually don't know exactly when they started. We think it's around the first century CE, but the Great Sanhedrin, which was the supreme judicial body, was regarded as a major source of Jewish learning, and it connected its role as a court with the head of the yeshiva. It was very, very connected to that. So there's a kind of back and forth as to exactly when it started. So the first yeshiva of major importance was the one run by Yochanan ben Zakkai, who established his house of learning at Yavna famously when he predicted that a general would become emperor. And then when he ended up correct, the now emperor said, I grant you one wish, so to speak. And he said, give me Yavna and its sages, and established a very famous yeshiva over there. So
do you know what was the name of it? Do we know the name?
Yavna.
The school was named Yavna.
Yeah.
In the city of Navna?
Yeah.
So creative.
Right?
Yeah.
Not all names are clever. You know what we call the 7 blessings at a wedding.
The 7 blessings for the wedding.
Yeah, sorry.
I was going to say it's from the great tradition of, the Babylonian Talmud being from Babylon. And
he could have been like Yavna University or Yavna Yeshiva. I don't know. They didn't have the word yeshiva or university. That's fine.
So the word yeshiva comes from the root lashevet, which means to sit. So they're sitting and they're learning. It says in the Talmud that you should sit at your master's feet and drink in their words, and also beware of their sticks that they would hit the students with, because it's not today. And I want to point out that there is another yeshiva in nerd culture.
In nerd culture? Another school, you mean?
There is another yeshiva style parallel in nerd culture.
Sky High.
Jedi school.
Ooh, neither of which I was thinking of.
Oh,
I was thinking
both are great answers.
Those are both great answers. I was thinking of Xavier's Academy for Gifted Children.
Oh yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
Yep.
But I will say, in addition to Hogwarts, what I'm going to start calling Hogwarts or a yeshiva, there's a developed misunderstanding of Muggle culture and Harry Potter world that develops from years of isolation. And I think this is what distinguishes Hogwarts from Xavier's Academy for Gifted Children. At Xavier's, the children grow up in quote unquote secular homes and then realize they're different. At Hogwarts, there is a class difference between wizard-born purebloods who have little understanding and even less care about the Muggle world, except for a select few. Thank you, Mr. Weasley. Versus the Muggle-born wizards who understand the plight of others and come to their defense at times, or get accepted as pureblood, even though they're raised by Muggles like Harry, or who get ostracized because of poverty, even though they're pure blood and raised by wizards. People like Ron will often get ostracized. So, the mean people will find things to be mean about you no matter where you are. And Ron's dad's fascination with the Muggle artifacts exacerbates this difference. What exactly is the purpose of a rubber duck? One of my favorite lines in all of the books. And it's like the first thing Mr. Weasley ever says to Harry.
Mm-hmm.
So, pausing there, what are the things that you love about Hogwarts Castle, or the concept of studying Judaism with a bunch of other like-minded Jews? Now, also caveat, the yeshivot in today's world and up to now are typically male-dominated. They are not places where women are very welcome because they are a distraction to study in their minds, not in mine. which I think is insulting to both women and men because it turns women into objects and it turns men into unable to think about anything else. So the modern institution of HUCJIR, I think, is actually a much better example in some circumstances, Rabbi Emma, because we do welcome all who would want to learn to become Reform rabbis. And yes, there are rules that before you get in, but it's much more lax than a typical yeshiva.
It's so interesting. I'm thinking about two things as you've been talking, and this is not at all what I thought we were going to be talking about. So, but it's really cool. So I'm thinking about the ways when you were talking about the sort of classism of the purebloods and the Muggle born, thinking about sort of the ways in which people who are studying in yeshivot or in modern day rabbinical seminaries are often trying to figure out or not figure out how to be in two different worlds. So, you have some examples of yeshiva, like yeshiva buchers, the like hardcore yeshiva students, Jason, and they don't try to live in the real world. They're just like fully immersed in the wizarding world, right? And then you have the folks like Harry and Hermione and Ron and their friends who have an appreciation and a desire to also have one foot in the non-magic world, in the non-yeshiva world. And that's a really tricky balance to strike, whether you're at Hogwarts or at HUC or any other wizarding or rabbinical school. So I'm thinking about that. And then I also was thinking about the way in which we keep the past alive and keep building on the past. And in Hogwarts, they have the photos, the pictures that are alive, that all the professors and wizards of the past talk and give their wisdom through their picture frames. And so there's like layers of dialogue.
And speaking of picture frames, I think J.K. Rowling missed a big pun by having the fat lady picture in front of the dorm instead of making it a griffin door.
Oh, there you go. Cool.
But then wouldn't it have been obvious? Like they're supposed to be not easily found by the other
You still
houses.
need a password.
Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, so, thinking about that generational dialogue that we have in rabbinic tradition, which is so much of what is studied, especially in traditional yeshivot, the sort of different generations talking to each other on a page of Talmud is the way we keep the past alive in our tradition.
I actually was also thinking about the ghosts at Hogwarts.
Yeah.
Literal ghosts. They nearly headless Nick and Sir Nicholas, no offense. And and Peeves the Poltergeist and the Bloody Baron being the ones that kind of get the most press. Oh, and then they have the one ghost that teaches history.
Mm.
Which I think is hysterical. That's so clever. Who's going to know the most history? Oh, a ghost.
And the one in the bathroom.
Oh, right.
Moaning Myrtle.
Moaning Myrtle, yeah.
So, we have lots of ghosts at Yeshivot, but they're venerated. We think about the rabbis on whose shoulders we stand, and we talk about them as giants. And whenever we want to teach, we teach in what's called B'Shem Omro, which is in the name of the one who spoke. And we really value the ghosts who roam our halls. And we could even think about like turning someone into a ghost. In the case of Acher, Acher means other. And other is the name for a rabbi whose actual name is Elisha ben Abuya. And he became an apostate because he declared that there's no God because of a story that you can read in Morton Steinberg's As a Driven Leaf. But they kind of shun him. But sometimes you still get his teachings. So there is still some value in having Acher's teachings, even if they treat him like a ghost, which made me think of near the end of the first book when they send Peeves away, tricking him into thinking that they're the Bloody Baron because they're under the invisibility cloak, and he's afraid of the Bloody Baron. So they also tell him to stay away and keep others away from the door where Fluffy is, where they're about to go and find the Sorcerer's Stone.
I just eating up this whole stretch of the conversation, this idea of so much of Judaism is about responding and talking about learning from the elders and the idea that at Hogwarts, literally they're there. Like that, just so cool. I love this.
I have a question. I'm thinking about how at Hogwarts they teach the dark arts also, and that there are teachers at Hogwarts who have shady pasts. And at Hogwarts, there's still some value, even in the sort of problematic professors. And yeah, you can interrupt me, but I'm wondering about how we hold on to or don't hold on to the teachings of rabbis who have problematic pasts. And I raise it because it is something that a lot of modern day rabbinical academies are struggling with, the shadier parts of our past. And as we are naming the problematic parts of our past, what do we do with the teachings that sometimes, rabbis who do things that we wish they didn't do have also said wise things and taught beautiful Torah. And what do we do with that?
Well, look, we're talking about Harry Potter.
Yeah.
I shouldn't say we. I work to separate the work from the author, who in recent years I no longer particularly agree with on a lot of things.
I think it's a different conversation, though, because the things that they're learning at Hogwarts, right, the Defense Against the Dark Arts isn't there. They never say, I'm trying to think of the way to get to this. The Defense Against the Dark Arts is learning about that other side of the conversation and having the response to that, so to speak. I view it more as like the Hillel Shammai piece of it and less about like they don't sit him down at the beginning of Defense of Dark Arts and say, Voldemort created all of this curriculum. We just want to name that from the beginning. We don't agree with him, but his teachings are valuable. They don't do that in this school, right? It's not about the people that had created these troublesome things. It's about learning about the other side of it. So I think it's less about the past of it, and more about the understanding of different perspectives. And yes, in that class, they're learning to defend because a lot of those pieces are dangerous. And so I think we have that as well when we talk about when you're becoming a Jewish professional. A lot of the times you have classes, right? Rabbis have classes to learn about how to comfort those who are mourning because bad things have happened to them. How do you counter those bad things? And you have these support classes that teach you how to comfort those around you, right? So I think that's the counter for that piece. It's that bad things happen. How do you engage with that in that moment, as opposed to the Voldemort created our curriculum and we don't really like what he does anymore conversation? And so I think it's a little bit different.
Well, and also think about, I don't remember what year it is, when Crouch was disguising himself as one of the professors and was taking the polyjuice potion, and he taught the kids the unforgivable curses. And what a terrible decision that is, because you can't trust children with you can't say to kids, here's something really powerful and dangerous, don't use it. That doesn't work.
Famously, that always goes well.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, and in the books, I mean, it has serious consequences towards the end. No spoilers for anyone. I don't know. Is there anyone?
We are well past
who hasn't read? Is there anyone who hasn't read the whole thing? But there's really serious consequences with Malfoy and the things that he's asked to do. As a child, that he's sent to be an assassin. And if he hadn't been taught that curse, he couldn't be used in that way. So it sets the kids up to be positioned in a war in a way that they should never have to be.
Yeah, totally. The other thing that I want to point out about Hogwarts is that it's not the only school. Just like there are multiple yeshivot in different areas. You mentioned Babylonia and Jerusalem already. There's one called the Palestine Yeshiva, which is way older than and has nothing to do with Palestinians. And Yavna we talked about as well. And there are other places wizards can learn. In the books and movies, we have Bobekstans in France and Durmstrang in Norway. And according to Harry Potter fan sites, there are so many more.
Wow.
Yeah, a blogger whose post I read, I don't know how accurate this is, but according to them,
it's on the internet. You can trust it.
It's on the internet. It's trustable. There are 11 known schools, 8 of which are named in the books and related materials. So, for example, there's Ilvermorny in Massachusetts, right? Because wizards are wicked smart.
Who knew?
Right? Brujeria in Mexico, Castelbrujo in the Amazon, and a lot more that I'm not going to try to pronounce.
And HUC in Israel.
And HUC in Israel. So, which actually, like, can you imagine a school called Hartumelat in Sfat, of course? What course of Jewish study would they have at the Israeli School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, and how would it be
Not-
different from other schools?
Wait, do they have
Well,
an
he-
Israeli one listed?
No, I made that up.
Oh, okay.
Hartumelat means sorcery of the mysterious.
Well, and also, okay, so it's the Tri-Wizard tournament, right? When they're all together, right? So is that like the equivalent of one of those like Bible quizzes?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
Like
Bible
like
quiz.
Yeshiva kids get together and they have like amazing like game show type experiences, but all the questions are about Torah. We used to play at Gucci when I was growing up at Goldman Union Camp Institute. Shout out to Zionsville, Indiana, and Jewish camps. We had in the Color Wars schedule, there was like a Bible quiz. And I'm like wondering what the Tri-Wizard tournament equivalent is for the modern day yeshiva.
Maccabea.
Like it's like the Great Race where you have to like run from station to station, practicing your spells and at the same time learning to dafen.
No, it's a Maccabea. We're back in this is a Jewish summer camp conversation.
Sure. We're back to Jewish summer camp. Or like the Olympics.
Is that Jewish?
The Jewish
The
Olympics.
Maccabea games.
Oh, the Maccabea games. Okay, yeah, that's fine. I'll allow it.
Yeah. So, Barak and Ethan, what kind of classes would be taught at the Israeli Hogwarts?
Oh man. I don't have a good pun or joke on this one lined up.
I was thinking something along the lines of like, I imagine you walking in and they're all like stirring cauldrons, but it's matzo ball soup.
Oh, that's so good, Barak.
I just did that the other day.
Delicious.
Well, maybe it's a sorting kippah.
Oh, for sure, Ethan.
Yeah.
Good one.
Yeah.
Yes, the sorting kippah. And instead of robes, they have talit, tote, and
With all the different colors. Yeah, absolutely.
oh yeah.
There's like the botany class, like Jewish plants or like the biblical species of
Like magical and yet kosher plants.
right.
Instead of Hagrid, it's a Jewish grandmother.
Yes, Bubby the groundskeeper.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that'd be amazing.
Oh, I was imagining. I'm trying to figure out how to work the mandrake in. Of like you pull it out, and it's not like this screech, but it's more of like, what are you gonna leave me in the dirt here all day? No, just fine. Put me back.
You never call. You never write.
And of course, the mandrake in Israel has no effect on anyone because we're all into all that. I don't think any of us on this call went to boarding school. Okay.
Nope.
Yeah, me neither. But we all went to college. So what did you study? Who were your friends? And what magic would you have done to make your experience better?
Wow.
That was a lifetime.
I know.
I studied math, minor in music, and I did do magic. In the sense that every week when I got to senior year, every week I made a different flavored cookie and a different flavored ice cream that my friends would like request on a little whiteboard in my room. And so every week I made a different batch of something. It was great.
Oh, fun. I studied world religions and I did a dual degree in vocal music. And if I could go back and do magic, I would freeze time. Like it was it went way too fast, and I was in a really big hurry. I knew I was heading to HUC. I was Hogwarts bound and I just wanted to get there. And so I really rushed the university experience. And if I could go back, I would freeze time and just stay there a little longer and immerse myself in the opportunities to learn things that I wouldn't necessarily have a chance to go back and learn and just have that sort of time of independence. And I think, that's also part of what Hogwarts does for these kids, right? They're away from their families. They're really learning to rely on themselves and on each other. And I think that's so much of what young people experience in college is that hopefully that safe space to begin to explore what it is to be out in the world on your own. Yeah.
Let me ask you in particular the same question about HUC. What magic would you have done to change something or make something different for you?
I would find a vanishing curse for the competitiveness. I think sometimes, we're there to learn beautiful things and to learn how to help bring meaning into the world. And we spend so much time, unfortunately, like trying to outdo one another. Or I think I'd also take away grades, like
Was it grades for you?
well, I guess some things were pass fail. Yeah, maybe we did have pass fail, but there was still that sort of sense of competitiveness. And
Well,
I
Hogwarts
wonder,
has that. Hogwarts has that competitiveness built in.
For
for
sure.
sure. For
They
sure.
have
I mean, I
grade-
think any academic institution does, right? Because if you care about learning, you want to be the best at it.
But if
They
you
have-
really care about learning, you want everyone to be the best at it.
Yeah, it's true. Well, it's interesting. I mean, I think, even if we look in rabbinic texts, I think sometimes we get a sense of the competitive nature of the rabbis also, like, comes through.
Well, think of Rabbi Eliezer, who in a story in Baba Metzia known as the Oven of Achnai, he gets the answer in a sense right, but everyone disagrees with him. And so they declare everything that he taught was kosher is now not kosher. And they go and like destroy all the artifacts that he declared kosher. And anytime in the earlier parts of the Talmud, anytime they bring up a teaching of Rabbi Eliezer, they're just going to prove it wrong. It's wild.
And talk about magic tricks. I think, there's also the text about the bat kol, the voice of God that comes in and says, this is right and this is right. And this sort of almost like magic trick that God performs, right? To equalize and to neutralize the argument and to say, there doesn't have to be just one answer. There can be multiplicity. Yeah. So I think a little bit more of that in the yeshiva space could be helpful.
For sure. I think that's such a great point. And I know that kind of competition happens in all academic situations and it's hard to prevent, but it would be so nice if we maybe sprinkled a little mild love potion on the bagels in the CL when we, at HUC, make everyone a little friendlier when they're quote unquote critiquing one another's services and sermons and cantorial concerts and things that we would gather to talk about them, but it was not a love fest. It was definitely let's see who's smarter than the presenter.
Yeah, I wonder why the school has this focus on houses and competition. Like I used to do this teaching of the fastest way to make a friend is to form a common enemy. And that can be used in many different ways. And this is absolutely one of those things where the other houses are your common enemy. And then the Tri-Wizard tournament comes on, and now your entire school is facing the other schools. And so now you're grouped together cheering for everybody within Hogwarts. But I'm trying to think about why Hogwarts set that mentality of us versus them right away.
Well, I think you answered your question in the explanation.
Easiest way to make a friend.
Yeah, it builds that camaraderie amongst a cohort of people.
Sure.
And on the first day of Hogwarts, I actually wrote this down. On the first day of Hogwarts in book 1, Professor McGonagall says, quote, "Before you take your seats in the Great Hall, you will be sorted into houses. While you are here, your house will be something like your family within Hogwarts. You will have classes with the rest of your house, sleep in your house dormitory, and spend free time in your house common room." End of quote. What she leaves out is that feeling of who's not in your house. And Ethan, I am so impressed by your ability to separate the art from the artist, because it was in the discussion of the houses that I had the most difficulty in separating J.K. Rowling from the book, because I feel like this kind of betrayed her feeling of how she feels about genders, thinking that there are only two. FYI, in the Talmud, there are 6. And in modern times, there's an infinite number on an arc. But that needing things separated, the black versus white, the good versus evil, muggles versus wizards, and even to like have nasty names for muggles and for muggle-born wizards was just like, I don't even want to say what it is because it feels like a swear word.
Yeah. It's always like one of those two-sided coin situations that, yes, on the one hand, when we are divided into houses, however we want to define those groups, it does build camaraderie and cohesion and bonds. But we also lose tremendous opportunities to learn and grow from others, from the other. back to the text about the other Acher, and there are periods of our own history where being divided has led to our downfall, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and times where we had different groups that weren't united, and like we could talk about today, like Reform and Orthodox or whatever. But whenever the Jewish world is divided, it hurts us more than it helps us.
For sure. I mean, the current history is exemplary of that. And yet we are instructed to put windows in our synagogues and in our sanctuaries because we should always be aware of the outside world. So there's a dichotomy there that we're not always paying attention to. And it would be, I think, helpful.
Can I ask, while we're on this topic of houses, what house is everybody? I'm assuming we've all nerded and taken the test at some point in our history.
Barak, you first.
Oh, sure. I am reluctantly a Hufflepuff.
I'm also reluctantly a Hufflepuff.
Yay!
Why reluctant?
Because everybody wants to be a Harry and a Hermione.
I would have been fine with the Ravenclaw, I think. Does anybody... Well, finish the houses and I'll say the next thing.
Ethan, go ahead.
Ravenclaw.
Oh, yeah, jealous.
I took the quiz today and I tested into Ravenclaw.
Wow.
Yeah.
And I also wonder if it's like the personality test. Like if you take it 6 months later, 5 years later, are you the same thing or have you evolved?
It's just like the Myers-Briggs test, if you're
it's not real.
If you're
ouch.
Wait, not a sponsor. When we're taking the Myers-Briggs test and we feel one way on a particular day that answers the question one way, and we go back to that question, there's so many borderline questions on those kind of tests. So you feel a different way the next day and you come up with a different kind of answer, maybe one that changes you from the LMNOP to a JFKQ. I don't know. I don't remember all the letters. But the point being, just like Harry Potter had that hat on his head telling him he would be great in Slytherin, but he chose Gryffindor. I think the same thing is true about these other personality tests. That there are days when I'm a Ravenclaw and there are probably days when I'm each of the other houses.
The thing that
right, like it makes me think about how the boxes that we put one another into and sort of being defined by others as opposed to having the opportunity to define ourselves. And I think even in the yeshiva world, especially if we think about the traditional sort of hardcore yeshiva, people go in very young and they don't necessarily have the opportunity to choose for themselves. And there are pros and cons to that also. These are spaces where ideally we have the opportunity to grow and discover and learn and change, but when they're not structured in that way, they also can prevent, even though we're technically doing learning, if the environments can also restrict us from growing in ways that we might need to grow.
Yeah.
The thing that surprisingly, I think, made me more happy to be a Hufflepuff was the off-Broadway show Puffs. I don't know if you haven't seen this.
Great show.
Yeah, it is an amazing show that sort of tells the story of Harry Potter's years 1 through 7, but only through the eyes of unnamed Hufflepuff students, essentially.
Oh, that's so cool.
That you've never seen. Yeah, it is a hysterical comedic show, and you should check it out if you can.
That's also Midrash, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like, how would we tell the story of the Exodus through the eyes of some random Israelites?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We would be remiss if on this episode of Harry Potter, we did not shout out the only student who could go to a yeshiva at Hogwarts is Anthony Goldstein, the only named Jewish student at Hogwarts that we know about.
I didn't get to him in book 1.
No, I don't think he's in book 1. I forget where he shows up.
I don't think he is. He comes in later.
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Minor character. There are some Jewish actors and actresses in the movies, though.
This is true. And it's very, again, this speaks to Rowling's binary view of the world, where she knows Christmas and she wrote about Christmas, and Christmas is a big deal. And I am thankful that Halloween is a big deal in the wizarding world as well.
I think that's where Anthony's named. I think that he's one of the students who stays behind during the break because he doesn't need to go home. I think that makes sense. I don't know which book it is, though. People, correct us. Let us know in the comments. Where does Anthony show up?
I will also say that when I went to see Puffs, I went with my eldest child, who is a monster Harry Potter fan and read the books multiple times and has seen the movies multiple times. And
I thought you were saying they were more of a Hagrid, like they're a monster Harry Potter fan, like only fans of the monsters and Harry.
Well, they are almost an entire foot taller than I am, so maybe. So we went dressed up in wizard robes, and I was carrying a wand that a congregant had made for me that glows in the dark, and I didn't know it glows in the dark until the lights of the theater went out. But listening to them laugh at the jokes and just enjoy was a double joy to see this great show with a great Harry Potter fan.
If you are thinking about doing a reread, I'll shout out the audiobooks are really excellent. And if you want to
I've heard that.
Do them together with your wonderful child, you could do it in that way. They're very good.
I would love that. Maybe when they come and visit us for spring break, we'll be able to do that.
I've spent
college.
That's insane.
This is a baby you've probably held.
Yeah, for sure it is.
I want you all to know that I've spent this entire episode trying to figure out what the magical acronym of HUC is. Just so you know, while this has all been going on.
All right, lay it on us, Barack. What's the
closest
draft?
I got, and it doesn't work, but you got to work with me here. The closest I got was Hogwarts Yeshiva Chai. It doesn't work, but
you've had better.
I've had better. Yeah, that's where I'm at in this less than an hour time frame that we were given for this.
Well, we are getting really close. So if anyone has anything to say before we wrap.
I will say that the Harry Potter books are actually what made me start reading. It was assigned as a summer reading, and my grandma had by chance bought me that book, and so it was on our shelf, and I read it, and it sucked me in. I had seen the first movie before I read the book, and so I was like, oh, I like the movie, I'll read the book. And this is the first time I ever picked up a book, then I could not put it down. And since that point, I have read books. Before that, I didn't even read Spark Notes. I just hated reading.
All right, pop quiz, hotshot.
Mm-hmm.
What book about 100 years later had the same effect on children and has a coincidence in the title?
Wait, what? I'm confused by the question.
Okay, there was a book 100 years earlier than Harry Potter that had the same effect on readers of that generation, and there is a coincidence in the title of the book that was earlier than Harry Potter.
100 years before, so in the 1800s, late 1800s.
The author also used an initial as a first name.
Lord of the Rings was 100 years ago.
It was L. Frank Baum, The Wizard of Oz.
Oh, that's super fun.
Yeah.
Cool.
Right? That's a fun fact.
Right?
I'm thinking we probably can't finish this episode without talking about the words abracadabra and how those are transformed in the books.
I'm gonna cross that off my list.
Yeah, was it on there? And the powerful dynamic between creation and destruction.
Wait, are we also going to mention? So I'm assuming you're talking about abracadabra related to Avada Kedavra,
right?
But we've not mentioned the Hebrew text that relates to abracadabra.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm not the rabbi. I don't remember the Hebrew words. I know there's a Hebrew word that abracadabra comes from. Yeah, so one of you can take it. Yeah,
this is
for DY.
It's not accurate. It's not historically accurate to say that this word comes from Hebrew.
You heard it here first, folks.
But in Hebrew, Abra Kadabra means I have created as was spoken. So, you say words and what you say comes to be, which is, I think, very much connected to Avada Kedavra, because you do have to mean it and you have to be intentional when you use your words, because they can heal and they can do great harm. And again, we're looking at, the author of these books who has used her words to great harm ever since she used so many wonderful words to entertain and teach and get people interested in reading. And that it is a very fine line and a responsibility that we have, those of us who use our words professionally.
That would have been a great twist if at some point Dumbledore or somebody else was able to use the same words of Avada Kedavra in bringing back somebody from the brink of death with the intentionality and the purpose behind it, as opposed to forcing the life out.
Right.
I assume J.K. Rowling was going for cadaver.
Oh, sure. I get that.
Cadaver.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I think it also really is a something for those of us who use religious texts regularly in our lives to consider, that these are also texts that can be used to make beautiful meaning and teachings and bring beautiful wisdom into the world, or they can be texts that can be manipulated to do great harm. And when we teach text, not just when we're writing text, but when we teach text, we have a responsibility to teach text with good intention. And
Stella. Yeah. We are going really long, and my apologies. I have a lot more
This
to
is
say
just book
about-
one of the Harry Potter
I
conversation.
know, right? A lot more to say about the Harry Potter and the wizarding world and how it connects to Judaism, but maybe we'll go into book 2 another time. I do want to shout out another podcast called Harry Potter and the Sacred Text.
So good.
It is fantastic. Every episode is a chapter by chapter reading through the Harry Potter series, and they connect some sort of value to each chapter, a different value to each chapter. It's wonderful. The hosts have been invited to co-host with us on Torah Smash. But hey, if you know people at Harry Potter and the Sacred Text and can get them connected with us, fans, we're counting on the dozen of you to send them our way.
Dozens. We're at dozens.
Okay, dozens. Rabbi Emma Gottlieb, do you have any projects you're working on, anything you want to shout out?
For sure. I'll shout out my own podcast, which is Women Rabbis Talk, which I co-host with my good friend and colleague, Rabbi Marcy Bellows-Lindenman. And we talk, she's really great. We talk to different women rabbis or female identified rabbis in each episode to highlight the work and the experience of women rabbis. So you can check us out, Women Rabbis Talk. And then if you want to find me on socials, my Instagram is at Rabbi Emma, and I'm on Facebook under my name, Emma Gottlieb. And I'm always happy to connect online. I'm not on X because it's a cesspool of darkness.
Agreed. And I'm glad you stay out of those dark arts that are taught at X. Thank you so much for being here.
Yeah, thank you.
It was such a pleasure.
Thank you. It was so great to be here.
That'll do it for this episode of Torah Smash. Our fiscal sponsor is Jewish Creativity International. Our theme music was created by Sean Fogel. You can check out Sean's bands and studio work at www.thesleepywest.com. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to rate and review us wherever you listen. It helps others find us and is an excellent way to support the podcast. We want to hear from you and continue today's nerdy discussion. Go to TorahSmash.com to find where to connect with us online, purchase swag from our store, support us with a donation, find previous episodes, and more. And Master has given Dobby an episode. Master has presented Dobby with a podcast. Dobby is now free to subscribe.
Big things coming out of this podcast.
I'm going to magically edit that beginning.
Remember that happiness can be found even in the darkest of times if one only remembers to light the Shabbat candles.